So recording is now going. So today's session is a completely bespoke module, guys. This module was requested to be added for you guys in particular, and is looking at the ISM code training. So it's looking at that practical safety management in shipping. And I thought it was a really good place to put the module because it came straight after ERR. So really, this month's and last month's assignments are going to feed on from one another because it's now going to be looking at how we ensure we have a robust system and that this is all fed into our ERR. So, as always, ground rules are the same, no change there for this month. Wider curriculum, we're very much going to be looking at that kind of literacy and numeracy element today. We're going to be looking at a very specific element towards your industry and how you guys are required to operate, and to ensure that if we're building a system, as an ISO 9001 system or 45001, that all of the intricacies within the code exist within that.
I'm just going to see if I can get this up on my TV screen so I could actually see it properly.
Oh, bless you.
I'm used to it. When I'm in work, I'm used to working with two monitors. Oh, that's better.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay, so key contacts are same as always, guys. If you need any additional learning support throughout your journey, then please do contact Jo Morgan. You've probably met and spoken to Amy. She's our compliance manager, but also our mental health first aider. So if you need any mental health support during program, then please do reach out to Amy. And then we've also got our Deputy Safeguarding Officer there, Sarah Gentlemantle, and she supports our designated safeguarding lead, who is Ed Johnson. So Ed looks after all safeguarding for our organisation, and Ed will be the person I would refer you to if you brought me any safeguarding issues that you would like support with during your time on the apprenticeship. So you'll see these slides every single month. So, and if you ever need to speak to Jo, Amy, Sarah, or Ed, please just let me know and I will happily introduce you and pop over their email address. So, endpoint assessment. So everything that we do, every assignment, everything that we build while we're on program together is all working towards this endpoint assessment that we will do at the end. So for you guys, that's split into two particular assessments. First one of those assessments is a professional discussion over your portfolio of evidence. Your portfolio of evidence is every assignment that we build together while we're on the course, okay? That's what we're presenting to the EPA at the end to showcase your competence. The second part is you're going to run a work-based project. So we're working towards system implementation for you guys. And then once you've run that project during EPA, you will then write a report on that project and you will then present that report to the EPA, and there will be a question and answer session at the end. So the EPA for QP is quite long. You actually do get almost 6 months to complete it. But remember, guys, that is what we call a window of time. If you have run your project within 12 weeks and written up your report, then you do not have to wait the remaining 10 weeks to sit the assessment. You can bring that assessment to be whenever suits you within that 22-week window. So everything we do leads towards this endpoint assessment that we sit at the end. Very luckily for QP, you don't have any actual formal exams, which is nice, but you will get that project and we'll work on that towards the last 2 or 3 months of your training time with me. So we are going to have a look at the ISM code today, and we're going to look at why a safety management system is required specifically for your industry. and how we apply those principles into practical workplace scenarios. We're also going to look at your responsibility within that as managers, department managers, team leaders, quality practitioners, quality managers, and how important it is that when we embed your system, it's embedded to this code specifically, as well as taking in all those areas of a quality management system as well. So that's kind of like the little bit of a juggle that you guys will have as we build this system over the next kind of year, is going to be the fact that we have to always take this into consideration as well as those requirements for a quality management system. So you guys have probably heard of the ISM code before, and it is an international standard that all companies that work within the kind of shipping industry have to apply to their operations. Okay. And it looks at the kind of safe management of ships, safe onboard operations, pollution prevention, responsibility between ship and shore, and continual improvement within safety management. The code recognizes that safety cannot depend only on individual good judgment. Companies need organized systems, clear responsibilities, and consistent procedures in place. Okay? And really, it's governed by the International Maritime Organization. And they insist that companies have a management framework in place that requires proper systems that manage safety and environmental protection. So, one thing for you guys is while you look at quality management 9001, actually, the most appropriate system for you might be an EMS or a HNS MS, which is your 14,001 environmental and 45,001 health and safety systems. So it's ensuring that it's very specific to your industry. So why was the code needed in the first place? And really, it was to ensure that all the accidents that were happening out at sea were starting to be managed and recorded properly. We needed companies to take responsibility for safe operations and to ensure that that communication between ship and shore was really, really clear. Okay. And it starts really with organizational culture. And that's one thing Neil talked to me a lot about at the beginning. And that, standardization is where you guys need to improve. And having this kind of code and this standard in place allows each area of the business to align with that, which then gives you the consistency that you need. Procedures are documented and consistently applied across the board. It shouldn't matter where in the country you are for that to apply. The procedures should be the same. Okay, you might have very specific port procedures in each area that will require, different documentation or different entry and exit requirements, but invariably that consistency should be able to be applied. And that when we do have those incidents, that we are learning from that and we are showing that we are learning from that. So it's about being proactive, being systematic, in the same way that ISO is about being proactive and systematic. And the key that brings the two standards so closely aligned with one another is that continual improvement element. Both codes demand that we learn from what we do, we improve what we do, and therefore we can push forward. It's never just about who makes the mistake. It's about what in our system allowed this risk to happen and develop. So the system should allow us to recognize what interdependencies we have procedures that will allow risk to appear within what we do. So it's very much looking at that frontline behavior, that management system that says we do things this way consistently, organized, we react, we record, we manage, we improve what we do. And we can evidence that. It's not just about saying that we do it, it's about having the evidence in place to show it. And ISO links closely to that as well. You know, you can't tell me something in an audit. You need to show me something in an audit. You need to evidence for me that that exists and that you can show me that it happens and that you are checking the quality of that. And where mistakes are found, you are continually improving it. So the bigger picture and the reason the code exists in the first place is about safety management in practice, real safety management in practice, and us being able to look at the bigger picture of it all together, not just the procedures are there, but the people that we have carrying them out, the leadership that we have driving the force and the culture, the resource that's put in place for us to deliver these procedures. And really importantly, in what you guys do, you know, less so in the quality management arena, but emergency preparedness. Yeah. Knowing what you're going to do when it does go wrong and how you are going to manage that. Reporting systems are key, and continual review shows that you are doing that plan, do, check, and act, that quality management cycle within your doing, within your system. So one of the things that is so important is that organizational culture, that people part at the very beginning. And I've been to ISO audits before where the board, the company, really want that nice stamp, that nice kite mark on their certification so that, you know, they can use it for tender. And I go into a boardroom and I'm presented with all this pretty evidence. And my first question is, I'm going to go and see some of these processes and procedures be completed. And I'm going to go have a chat with your staff downstairs. And I've gone downstairs and I've met the team who've got absolutely no idea what ISO even is. Yeah. They've got no idea what it means. They've got no idea where their quality policy is. They've got no idea why they would need a quality management system in the business. And whether or not you present me with 5,000 shiny documents that look like a beautiful system, if your staff don't know what it is, then you failed your audit up front with a major non-conformance of the system not being embedded throughout the organization. People need to know what is expected of them in line with this code. So if the code isn't embedded, people don't know what they require to meet. So it's the first biggest kind of thing that we need to take into consideration is, what's the culture look like at the moment? Do we embed quality management? Do we embed the ISM code into what we do? Or do we not? Does everybody run on different procedures? Is every site unique and different? Could they operate across the same standard? And this is where we start looking at quality versus the code and seeing how we can merge those two things together. Sorry, Thor's determinedly looking out the window and opening the curtain behind me, which creates like this weird halo of light. So the next thing, once we've made sure that our system exists and embedded, risk management, so our risk register comes back into it. Yeah, we now need to re-review that risk register we've done, not just based on business risk, not just based on quality management, but now based on this code. Because this code is the core principle of how we need to operate in our organization. So therefore, we need to be looking at, you know, have we looked at emergency readiness as part of our ERR risk register? Have we looked at our culture against the code? Have we looked at our procedures and how they align? How do we feed all this in to that risk element? And then again, we need to look at how communication works, how problems are reported, and then how we improve those systems over time. People often think that the code is quite large and technical, but that's the main principle of it. Your team know what's expected. You can plan for your risks. Your communication works. Your problems are reported. Your systems are improved. When you look at that against ISO 9001, not a great deal of difference between those two things, is there? It's just your code is very specified to your industry. But actually, the core principle is exactly the same. Yeah? Safety, risk, improvement. So the core objectives of the code are very simply, it's not rocket science, is it, guys? Safety at sea. To prevent human injury or loss, and to avoid damage to the environment, the marine environment particularly, and property at sea. So it's not asking a wild amount. It's actually quite similar to the Health and Safety Act, if you think about it in that sense. It's not a huge amount different. It's just asking you to take responsibility for risk management, whether it's environmental, human, or biological at sea. So, in your place at the moment, guys, do you think that those core objectives of the code are embedded in your day-to-day operations?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you talk about the code a lot?
We don't talk about the code, but certainly, all the crew know their obligation to safety, where to report it. Maybe the lessons learned not passed down so much. We're getting better at that, especially on sort of bigger health and safety breaches that we've had, or incidents that we've had, or near misses. That's then getting passed down. And all the guys know about the environment that they need to look after and what they should be doing. So we drill every month for different environment hazards.
Yeah. So you've got very much kind of like that changing landscape, haven't you? Nothing's ever exactly the same as it was before. Everything will have its own intrinsic differences and risks that come from where you are and
Yeah.
location. Yeah.
So
Interesting.
regardless, every single month the guys will do a person in water drill and an abandoned ship drill, and then throughout the rest of the year, there's another sort of 20 different drills, which everything from collision, grounding, oil spill at sea, oil spill on shore, and then they're just spread out throughout. So they'll cover at least one of those drills once in a 12-month period.
And I take it you evidence all that clearly for your records in the background. So if anything were to happen, you can show that, you've carried out that training, you've done those drills.
Yeah, so it's all done through SharePoint.
Okay.
So it's not, you don't have a duty manager sat over the guys while they're doing the drill. So it's basically done on trust that they're not just doing a tick box exercise, but at the end of the day, they are ticking boxes to say that they've done it.
I must
Okay, and I take go on, Shona.
So with our guys, obviously they actually write it in the vessel logbook as well.
Yeah, it goes in there as well.
So that they've done it, and then it obviously goes on SharePoint. I think we've roughly got the same drills. You've got the wonderful drill calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I say, but it's not monitored by the duty managers, as in we don't go, right, we're all doing drills today, because we just can't do it. We just can't do it that
Okay.
way. The duty managers
Right.
will
Okay.
get involved because the duty managers need to do drills as well.
hmm Well,
But you know,
that's kind of spot checking, isn't it? In a sense.
yeah, and we do have audits as well, and on the audits,
Mm.
you know, part of the audit will
Yeah.
be watch a drill.
Mm. And if you are just randomly turning up to do your own drills, it kind of gives them that thing that they never quite know when you're going to come to do your updated drill. So, you know, they need to make sure it's carried out every single day.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So you've got a system in place that would allow you to evidence
yeah,
that you meet the requirement of the code. And I think
yes,
that's what's most important is that you are evidencing it. What we need to make sure is you're evidencing it exactly the same way, because you should be. As an
yeah,
organization, doesn't matter what, you know, I mean, the timetable might be different because you might have different operating hours, etc. But what is carried out and the frequency that it's carried out should be the same across both of you.
yeah. Uh, I mean, it's probably the same for all departments in Briggs. The thing that we're very, very bad at is we don't have any scripted training plans.
Okay.
So that's something that, say, I've been working on. So I've tried to create a drill folder, because at
hmm
the moment, if we do a person in water, the guys will literally just do a person in water drill. What they don't
Okay.
do is they don't do the lead up to that. So the lead up to a person in water is, okay, yes, we sound the alarm. We then need to go into the search and rescue. We've now found the casualty, so we now recover the casualty. Now that we've recovered the casualty, we now need to go into giving first aid.
hmm
Now that we're given the first aid, we need to recover and do a handover. We don't do that. We just literally, man goes overboard, we go around, we recover it, and then we go back ashore. And
Yeah. So
so
it's
there's
just
no,
practicing the kind of physical part of it, not the actual procedural part of it.
yeah. So that's what I've been trying to work on, and hopefully do it
Mm.
as part of this course,
Yeah,
is
that'd be
create
great.
a drill folder, but not only that, but also a training manual. So there's proper lesson plans and all scripted. So
Mm.
it doesn't matter who delivers the training. It's not Peter's taught Paul and Paul's taught John, but
hmm
what they're teaching is whatever they've been taught from someone else, whether it's right or wrong or not.
Yep. And that is where you would fall down with the code. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Because
yeah,
you got the evidence to say you're doing it. But if
yeah,
anybody drilled the evidence to see what sat behind that, that's where you would then go, actually, I'm not meeting the code requirement, because exactly what you want to put in place, Richard, is
yeah,
exactly what should exist to meet the code.
yeah.
Is
So
it follows that level of standardization. And then once you've done it for your area, that gets rolled out to every other Briggs across the group, so that
yeah,
everybody is then doing it in exactly the same way, using the same documentation and system and procedure.
yeah, absolutely. So I think,
Yeah.
Shawnee, you probably got the training handbooks as well, are the workbooks.
And we, with our drills, I think we've ended up, they look like big ship drill forms.
Yeah,
Um, obviously you've got a list of stuff that you run through, but I mean, obviously, I mean, I go out with the guys and do the drills. But it's that they're not one thing that I've had from them. I think it might have been back in Tipu days, that these kind of obviously cards appeared. They're not they're not relevant, some of it, to our part of the business.
yeah,
And I think it's like the first or second thing is just like obviously ring your duty manager. Um, our guys are all, you contact your manager when you're able to
hmm
do so. So there's no sort of like clear
hmm
consistency there. So if someone come into the business that didn't know anything, well, I thought it's obviously we've done certain procedures down our end. So it's basically an idiot's guide. So someone coming in could sit there and go like this, and this, and actually do it without kind of no guidance.
So
Yeah.
really,
So,
you've both got two different ways of doing the same activity going on there in two different places.
yeah, I mean, similar activity, but you know, it should be very, very similar activities. Sean, have you got the Tipu bring into there the new starter workbook where they sign off the training that they've done?
I think he tried to introduce it, and obviously we've got our own sort of I think a couple of years ago, obviously Travis and Josh actually built a training manual that covers obviously mooring operatives, berthing masters, deckhand, coxswains.
Yeah.
And we've kind of obviously based it on our one's obviously based on that, and then we do a competency, if I can say it, sign-off sheet. Obviously, a duty manager or a senior mooring operative, coxswain, berthing master will go out and obviously sign them off as competent, with a training record, with the list of jobs that they've done.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's similar to what we've got, but we say at the moment we've got the training record book that each guy has. They're signed to say that they're familiar with the vessel and that they've been trained by coxswain A, B, and C throughout their training. But they're signing to say that they've done this, but it's when I ask them, okay, so what have you actually done to say that you signed that? They go, oh well, you know, I got shown. Okay, but where's the training package? And the difficulty is, especially when it comes to things like man overboard, and those kind of things, I don't want to start teaching something which is RYA taught, because how do I know that I'm actually teaching the right syllabus or testing the right syllabus? So that's the difficulty that I'm approaching at the moment, is making sure that the right thing's taught at the right time.
I think this would be a really, really cool project to see come to fruition. So I think once we've finished the risk register bit at the beginning for the code, the next bit is going to be this section where we look at creating and putting this together as a rollout to go live. Because I think, it'd be interesting for you both to see what the differences are between what you're doing at the moment and what changes you would make, Richard, to what changes Shona would make at her end, and how we standardize that process across the board. Because it sounds key, because if anything goes horribly wrong, those records are where that everybody is going to drill down into. And I saw that at my last workplace, where it wasn't ships, of course, it was trucks. But the company that I worked for had a fleet of on-site engineers, and they all used to go out onto varying different contract sites to do vehicle inspections. And their hiring process very much consisted of, have you got 20 years experience as a bus or HGV inspector / engineer? Yes, you have. Cool. There's your kit. Off you pop. Here's your 40 contracts. You need to go around and service these vehicles. Yeah.
It's very similar for us. So, I mean, as an ex-HGV driver, and working agency and, for the likes of Stobart, is, you turn up.
Oh, did you drive a Stobart truck?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Love a Stobart truck.
You turn up and you have a written assessment generally to test your highway knowledge and trucking knowledge and your driver's hours, and then you're taken out with one of the senior drivers, who then assesses your driving. But we've got to do the same sort of thing, but over a much wider and longer period. It's just making sure that the right thing is being assessed.
right time to ensure keeping it on a cycle, but
Yeah.
also making sure it fits the needs of anything that's coming up at the same time. So it's got to be proactive, but also a little bit reactive in case there is an incident, because you know that if there is an incident, there will be some training requirement that comes out of that to ensure you show that you have made sure everybody understands how to do what they're supposed to do. Yeah.
It's just that there's a fine line between, not overstepping someone, as in an assessor's knowledge of, if I was testing somebody, assessing somebody for a HGV, I wouldn't be assessing their ability to drive, as in for the license that they've got, because an instructor has already done that, an examiner's already done that. If you know what I mean. He's
Yeah, but
already got the
you're
license.
testing something different. You're testing ability to operate against a procedure that you're putting in place. So this is what we as an organization need you to do. Yeah, you've got your initial qualification and your understanding of how to do the job, but how do you measure that they're doing it the way you want them to be doing it? Because that will be different in its own way, won't it?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So the ISM code states that a company should provide safe practices in ship operations, should provide a safe working environment, should identify risk and establish safeguards against them, should continually improve the safety management skills of shore-based and shipboard personnel, which is what you're saying, Richard. That's a key element of your role, is that it's not just a 5-yearly update. It is a continual training cycle that you need to manage. And then prepare for emergencies affecting safety and environmental protection. So for me, with what we're going to look at for the code, particularly for the assignment, is looking at kind of points 3 and points 5 on the slide, is that as part of our risk register, we've established those risks and safeguards, and that we've prepared for those emergencies, and that we've got that procedures, practices in place if something were to go wrong. So it's really important that we marry what we've done with the enterprise risk register, that overall business risk, with the intrinsic detail that sits within the ISM code. So that really was where I want to direct the assignment, because I think that'll give that register that level of robustness that it would need in your particular operating environment. But you guys, in the sense of what those actual risks and emergencies are, you guys are the SMEs. I'm the SME on building a system and putting that system in place and getting it embedded and working. You're the technical guys. You understand the detail that sits behind that. So really, you know what's high risk to your organization. Yeah, if this goes wrong, this is really bad. And we're going to need this to protect ourselves in that environment. And that really is why emergency preparedness, environmental protection, and risk in your thing feeds so neatly into that risk register. So, what is a safety management system? First of all, we will need to establish that safety and environmental protection policy. Now, I imagine you already have this, guys. This will not be something that we will be creating, but it's the first thing that goes in the front of our system that we're putting together, okay? Because it is the core, it's the objective of the system. We then want to look at instructions and procedures for safe operations. So, Richard, this is very much where your element of the training, those records, those plans, that standardization fits into it. And what I want is, depending on, because different people will have different roles and will have different areas they want to concentrate people to work on the bit that really will add value to their area within the organization. Of communication, accident and non-conformity reporting and procedures, emergency preparedness procedures, internal audits and management review. So a lot of what we're going to do throughout the quality practitioner, those key points, we're going to pull back into the lectures. So we've got modules 5 and 6, which all sit around internal auditing. When we do that, we're going to look at internal auditing and management review within the ISM code. Okay, so we're going to map back to this all the way through to make sure with this system we come out with at the end, it's fully embedded within it. So our safety and environmental protection policy. This is our kind of core document that's going to sit at the front of the system. And it is a company policy. So I am pretty sure it already exists in one format or another for you guys, but it should explain the commitment to safety. It should explain the commitment to pollution prevention and the objectives of the ISM code should be embedded into that. How are we going to achieve it? And what is the expectation on board and on shore for our operations? So it should kind of really allow the whole organization to understand the investment and the commitment that the business has to safety and environmental protection. It should outline how we will train and what our ethos is on that, what behavior we expect and what our ethos is of that. But this is not a procedure. Yeah, this is our more higher level, pretty fluffy policy is intent. It's our intent as an organization. This is how we believe that our core values will operate from. Okay. Some organizations write longer ones than others. But what I want you guys to do as part of the assignment for this month is find me yours. Okay, because it's going to be that core document at the front. We're definitely going to need it. We're going to put it in front of our risk register. We're then going to put our risk register in. We're then going to start building our procedures for each of our departments. We're going to put them in, and then we're going to move on to how we manage the auditing, the non-conformance, corrective actions, and risk element. So you guys definitely have one already, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So this is not a difficult task I'm giving you to do here. This is just go and grab it. Does it cover everything? Does it map to the ISM code directly, or does it not mention it at all?
I'd have to read it. I will be honest.
That's cool. That's fine, Shona. I gave you that as homework anyway, so I was just being cheeky to see if you knew. So yeah, homework, part of homework is to bring that to whatever assignment session we book for this month. Okay, so I can have a nosy, and we've then got that as the first element of our system. So as part of the ISM code, there are certain definitions that really matter. Okay, and that's because in a sense, in your industry, in the same, Richard, you will know with the truck industry, in certain roles, there is a level of legal responsibility within that. So depending on what role you're in, there could be legal consequences if things go wrong. So the code requires that the company is not just the ship owner, yeah, but it's also the ship manager. So in transport, we have that. In logistics, it's not just the owner of the transport organization, it's the transport manager. There's also wholly responsible for that. So we have to make sure that the company understands its responsibility within the operation of the actual ship. Because often you have investors, companies don't always understand everything about operations and delivery, which is why then the ship owner and the ship manager become two separate entities, because they have a legal requirement in different ways at that point. Oh, my mouse is not working. So the company's responsibilities is to define and document who is who, levels of authority, who does what role, define that responsibility and authority hierarchy within the business, how those roles interconnect with one another, to ensure that there are adequate resources available to carry out the work, and to ensure that shore-based support for safe operations is in place. Okay, so we need to understand who makes the decisions, who approves the actions, who reports the problems, who provides the support, how do we manage our safe systems. Okay, we need to have that understood in our risk register. Because if we don't, that leaves the company at risk, but also the responsible parties at risk. So understanding and outlining that is part of what we're doing with the risk register element. So we can ensure that we know where we sit, and we will, as part of that, put together kind of a roles and hierarchy for each of your areas of the business. So we must have in the ISM code a designated person ashore. So in your teams, are you guys the designated person ashore?
No, it's John Marshall for the company.
That's John Marshall for the company.
Yeah,
and that's
we've got a deputy person ashore as well.
Right, okay. And so you don't do it site by site, you have an overall for every site.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you agree that that's the right practice? Just asking the question.
I mean,
I'm nosy.
As far as I'm aware,
standard in the industry.
So I mean, they're totally independent from all sites. So if one of the crew's got an issue with the management, then they can go to the DPA with that issue.
Okay.
So they're part of BRIGGS, but they're independent. They're not part of this site whatsoever. So they have no links with the management.
Okay, that makes total sense. So that person is the direct link between your ships, your senior management, and your shore staff, and deals and monitors kind of in the same way a transport manager monitors operations with the drivers, manages those operations with all your operators.
Yeah.
Okay. And they ensure that you've got your adequate resources, and they kind of travel that information from each site in each area up to the senior leadership team.
Yeah, so they've got direct link with the board.
Cool. So awesome. So basically they are the link to the board for safety concerns.
Yeah.
Okay. So the master should be responsible for implementing the company's safety and environmental policy, motivating the crew to follow that policy, ensuring clear and simple orders, checking the requirements are followed, and reviewing the safety management system and reporting deficiencies to shore management. So, who's your master in your particular environment?
That's the coxswains.
Coxswains.
Okay.
So we have a two-man crew on the pilot boats.
Okay.
You've got the deckhand, the coxswain, and then that's it.
Okay, cool. So that person is pretty much in charge of implementing that and managing that throughout every journey that you make.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to implement a bit of a culture change, changing it from coxswain to master, because at the moment, you know, the word coxswain doesn't really give that authority kind of pronouns. So the coxswains just think that they get on, they drive, they tie up, and then they go and have a cup of tea. without realizing that there's a whole load of background stuff that they should be doing as well as crew management. So when you implement words like master, it then gives a bit more, okay, yeah. So I always try and say, you know, you're not just a coxswain, you're also a supervisor. You know, you should be managing, you know, others.
Absolutely. And I think this is the terminology from the code itself. So this is what the code describes that particular role as.
Yeah. I think they all know that, you know, once they step on board, it is their boat and they're responsible. But I don't think they fully understand the responsibilities that they're responsible for.
Interesting. So I think that would again lead back to your training stuff, wouldn't it? For training that out, that particular role and that standardized training, that it is actually, you know, those key 5 points that sit within the ISM code are the key 5 areas of that person's job description, really. Yes, Shona.
Yeah, obviously that's where I think Richard's got an advantage with that, because obviously our coxswains are multi-skilled. They start off as a mooring operative, and then obviously work their way up to coxswain, but they're not a designated coxswain for a particular vessel. Obviously we've got
okay, so they will go between different vessels, whereas Richard's, yours kind of work on particular ones.
Yeah, so we've got three different types of vessels, and the coxswain will be able to drive. Well, the crew can operate each and every one of them vessels. The same vessel, essentially, just different sizes.
Okay. I'm so excited to come over to Liverpool and see this in action, guys.
I am trying not to disappoint.
I'm a nerd in real life. I hear all this stuff, but I love actually then getting to go out and see it in reality. So I'm excited to do that. But really, from what the code says about the master and their particular role, it should be about reducing confusion and continually improve and support. So really, when you look at the code protects the master's authority, because in the code's mind, they're making real life safety critical decisions in real time about operational procedures and things that are happening as they go. So, you know, if they're thinking the weather is unsafe, they should be able to make that decision to delay that departure. If they think a piece of equipment is broken or damaged, they can make that decision to stop the ship from leaving. If they think there's any serious hazards on board, they should be reporting that in and delaying the start. Does that make sense? The code is saying that particular role is very much there to make those decisions on safety, make those decisions on pollution prevention, and call into their direct line manager, the team leader, the supervisor in that particular area if they are unsure that on the decision that they need to make. But in the code's eyes, they're a very practical role that looks after that onboard safety, pollution, risk management on a day-to-day basis. So in the code, it actually has very specific requirements for that job role. Okay, it says they should be properly qualified for command within the role. It says they should understand the organization's safety management system, that they should receive the necessary support, and each ship should be manned by qualified, certified, and medically fit seafarers, and that all personnel should understand relevant rules and guidance. So they do make quite a big deal about that particular role and the importance of it in your safety management system and in safe operations, both onshore and offshore. So one of the things that the code will want you to define when we look at that roles and responsibilities is where that sits within your hierarchy and authority, and is that role meeting the requirement of the code? The code says this role should carry out these actions, these responsibilities. Is that currently where that role sits in your organization? So the code also says that the organization must provide training. I don't like the word familiarization. I hate it, to be honest, guys. Familiarization is such an ambiguous word. Yeah, it should just say new personnel are trained on their duties and it's documented. But for some reason, we like to use the word familiarized, which I feel is a bit of a cop out in some senses. But we're needing to make sure that we can formally evidence that new personnel are trained on their duties. Yeah, that they are, when we are changing things or we're transferring people to new assignments, that we have evidenced briefings that are taking place, so that if something goes wrong, we can evidence we have briefed our staff properly before they have embarked. We need to ensure that we can document we have given essential instructions before sailing happens. We need to make sure that our safety management system clearly outlines the need for training, how training is delivered, what is recorded, what the cycle is. So, Richard, going back to what we talked about earlier, there's a whole section in the code about this. Yeah. And how we do it. And, it doesn't say you must do it in this particular way. It just says you must do it and you must be able to document that you do it. And if you can't, and it all goes horribly wrong, then the regulator is going to come for you at that point because you should have had that in place. Information is provided in working language. I'm sure dealing with people where English is not their first language is a day-to-day thing for you guys in your operations. So, making sure that that is available in varying languages if needed for your workforce, whether it's onshore or offshore, and making sure that the communication pathways are clearly documented for related duties within your safety management system. So it really wants you to, in a sense, when we use the word familiarization, which I do not like, staff need to understand what they must do, what local procedures apply, where emergency equipment is, who do they report to, and what to do if something goes wrong. So, new personnel are familiarized with their duties is an absolutely horrible way of writing that out. But really, it's saying they to understand how to do this. Okay. So it could be something along the lines of, I don't know, thinking about it in your environment rather than my environment, but examples maybe of instructions that they could be given before sailing. Yeah. Could include things like emergency duties, alarm signals, equipment, role-specific procedures. Do we need to prevent those in different languages? Do we need to run training? Do we have training records to say that we've shown people and they understand what the emergency duties are, that they know what the different alarm signals are, that they know what the critical equipment is on site, that they understand what to do if there is a pollution incident? Yeah, it's all of those things. Can we evidence that we've trained them, that we've continually upskilled them, that we've improved our procedures? Yeah, so that if something goes wrong, We have got everything we need to say we did everything possible to stop that from happening. We've got our master in place. We've got our procedures in place. We've got our drills in place. We've got our training plans in place. We've got our induction records in place. We're good. We're nicely organized, and we have what we would recognize to be a safety management system within the business. So we need to make sure that we have all of our shipboard operations documented out clearly. Now, this one may be different from site to site. This one may be different from vessel to, I'm not a ship specialist in the sense of what the differences would be, but we need to make sure that those key shipboard operations are available for each vessel, each site, and that looks at the safety of that particular ship, the prevention of pollution for that particular ship, clear task allocation when on board, who is doing what, and the qualified personnel required to do that. So when we look at the word kind of key operations, we could be looking at anything from navigation to cargo handling to mooring to managing the permits and the paperwork to dealing with any waste that happens. But each key member of staff should know each key procedure that they are carrying out and what the consequences are if it's not carried out correctly. What could the risk be that sits on the back of that procedure being done wrong? And then there's not having the evidence in records in place to say that we have effectively trained that person before we have asked them to carry out that procedure. So all linking back to that safety management system, those key procedures and those key records that we keep to show that we monitor and measure those key procedures. And, I'm sure offshore, onshore operations are as equally important as shipboard operations, but shipboard operations are absolutely where your biggest risk sits as an organization. So, emergency preparedness. The code states that a company should identify potential emergency shipboard situations. So we're going to add this to your risk register. Yeah? What happens if the ship sets on fire? What happens if the ship runs into another ship or a wall or a bridge? Yeah? What happens if it ends up grounding? What happens if it gets a hole and it sinks? Yeah? What happens if the fuel tank breaks and fuel pours out into the sea, river, wherever it is that you are? What happens if the steering wheel breaks? What happens if someone, as you said earlier, Richard, goes overboard? Yeah? What happens if there's a serious injury or medical evacuation? The code states it's not enough to have a procedure written down. People need to practice. Communication needs testing. Resources need confirming. And drills need doing. And all of that needs evidencing and documenting to say that you've done it. And it should be standardized and consistent across the board. So for all of those things that I mentioned there, we need to know how we're going to respond. Yeah? What is the immediate response that's going to happen? Is everyone going to do the same thing? Yeah? Because we won't drill something all the time, but testing it in reality to drilling it all of the time could be two very different situations. Depending on what it is, something like a fire, people could be fight or flight in these situations. You never know. So, and then ensuring that we have time to respond to hazards, accidents, and emergencies. Okay? We don't put it as something that rarely happens. We put it as top priority on our list of things, and that's what the code wants. It wants the organization to take responsibility for safety management, whether that comes from accident preparedness, emergency preparedness, systems, procedures, policies. It all comes down to keeping everyone safe. That is the core principle of what we're going to achieve if we have the code in place and a quality management system in place. We will have a system that continually improves each other and protects the business from harm. So, drills. Drills in your industry, and the code is very clear on this. You should have a program for drills and exercises as part of your emergency preparedness plan. It should be realistic scenarios. There should be debriefs after them. Lessons should be captured. Actions should be followed up. And there should be participation from all the relevant roles involved in it. So it's back to the question earlier that you said, Richard, what makes it meaningful rather than just a routine task?
Yeah.
How do we make it a meaningful process? You know, I did trucks for years, driver CPC courses. How many drivers have I sat and seen do driver's hours, driver's hours, driver's hours? Yeah. And they're going because they have to go. And they're doing it because they have to do it, not because they're not getting any value out of what they're doing. So how do we make it a valuable exercise rather than a routine task? Because the idea of it is to build familiarity. So how do you make something you have to build familiarity not a routine task? I think that's a really hard thing to do. You know what I mean? How do you make something somebody has to do interesting? So we need to make sure that they are really testing those procedures, the scenarios that we're putting in place. And maybe, Richard, that's one way of making it more valuable is lots of different scenarios that are drilled. I don't know how you do it at the moment, whether it's the same person overboard drill that you would do every time or whether you would do varying different ones.
I mean, it's the same drill, but it's different weather conditions.
Okay. So maybe you have to make them more creative. Maybe you have to come up with like a funky scenario for each one where, you know, something wild is happening on board. And they've got to manage lots of different things that are going on that might not happen in the real world, but would at least wake them up and test them while they were doing it. The idea to do it really, and one of the things that sits alongside building familiarity, is about reducing the panic if it happens in the real world. Yeah, we're not absolutely just going to have a total meltdown. We actually structured. We know what we're going to do. We understand where to go. We understand where the resources are. We know what we're doing. The drills are supposed to highlight any gaps in communication that you might have. Yeah. I think the fact, as you said earlier, that you're not so much doing the lead up and the after element of the procedure at the moment would mean that that's probably not being tested that well right now, because the communication leads at the lead up and the communication comes in the after, doesn't it? It's not in the managing of the incident. It's very specific to what we need to do to get this casualty back on board as quickly and efficiently, as safely as possible. Whereas actually there's a whole bit at the beginning and a whole bit at the end that needs testing as well. It should reveal training needs if we've got somebody who is struggling. And it should make us be able to look at what we're doing like you are at the moment and going, there's continual improvement that we can put in there to make this more valuable for the business so that we're actually using this time and that we have to use in a productive and valuable way. So your safety management system within the code says that you should have a system for managing non-conformance, accidents and hazards. Okay, that should be a procedure for non-conformance and how they are reported, accidents and how they are reported, hazard situations and how they are reported, events that happen that need investigation and to be analysed, and how we then take the information from that and feed that into that continual improvement cycle. So we should be looking at what's happened, what's gone wrong, what's caused harm, damage, or loss. And that doesn't matter whether it has come from a non-conformity, an accident, a hazard, or an event. Yeah? What's gone wrong? And then we need to look at what hazard did we not identify as part of this risk here? How did this get? Why are we where we are? How did we get to this? What hazard did we not identify? Yeah. And then what are we going to do about it? Not just to put out said fire that we've identified here, but to also make sure we never get back here ever again. So that's that feeding in to that improvement. So in the same as ISO, the code is quite specific when it comes to corrective action. So in ISO, it's often called continuous improvement, but really in the realms of the real world, they're exactly the same thing, guys. Yeah, corrective action is continually improving your system. So corrective action states that the company should act on finding, correct the immediate issues, identify the root cause, prevent reoccurrence, record all actions taken, and review whether that worked. So when we look at ISO, it's almost exactly the same, yeah? In exactly the steps that we would take. We might call them different things, but the steps are no different. The correction, and often where people get this wrong, is they think that the correction is fixing the problem, but it's not. The correction we're making is putting out the fire. Yeah? The corrective action that we're going to put in place is addressing the root cause of the problem. And that's what the ISMO code asks. Is also exactly what ISO 9, 14, or 45 would ask you for. So it's interesting to see that you look at the structure of a EMS, a health and safety EMS, a quality management system, and it's really no different to this safety management system, is it? The principles are exactly the same. So the code, and this is very similar to the logistics industry, has a lot in it that sits around that maintenance of your ship and your equipment. So the code states that every organization should ensure they can show a maintenance schedule that is in line with the rules and requirements. Okay, so it's no different whether you're looking, Shona, you were talking to me about yours failing your MOT earlier. Do you know what I mean? It really is no different, is it? Whether it's a car, SUV, a van, a truck, a ship, a plane. Yeah, we have to have that clear maintenance schedule, those clear inspections done and documented, all non-conformances, or as defect reporting is what I would prefer to call it in that environment. ISO calls it non-conformance or non-conformities, but really in our world, most of the time it would just be a defect that's been found. How they're reported, how corrective action is taken, and how those records are maintained. And as far as the ISM code is all about control and evidence in this area. Okay, so this is a little bit of a twist addition to an ISO standard. An ISO standard will have one clause in it that will state that, you know, the organization shall maintain all equipment in lines with manufacturers' warranties and guidelines, something along the lines of that. That's not quite the exact wording, but it's fairly close. Whereas the ISM code goes into a lot more detail on that maintenance section, and it needs that schedule that sits around when those inspections will be done and when those regulatory tests are done throughout the annual cycle. So you would expect to see that. They would expect to see a planned process, assigned responsibility, records, and follow-up trail, audit trail on all defects registered. Okay. And it's really important, this section. This section here is where if something goes wrong out at sea and you can't prove that you've maintained your fleet, yeah, you're going to have some real serious legal problems for not being able to prove that you have maintained your fleet in line with regulatory rules and requirements. So when we look at the risk register, we need to look at maintenance within that risk register. We need to be saying, do we have that in place? Yeah. How do we make sure it's stuck to? How do we make sure it's managed by each site effectively? Do people choose their own suppliers for this? How's the supply chain work for managing it? Something were to, someone were to go off sick, or we lost our third party supplier who manages that for us, we need to understand what happens in that critical key environment. And that's because a lot of the time when we think about maintenance, there's a lot of safety critical equipment that exists in your working environment. Yeah. So you need to make sure it's working properly, safely, and that it is checked regularly. So do you do like a walk around check before you go?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a defect check.
Our guys
Absolutely.
do
And you
sheet in like a daily check sheet on the vessels at least.
Exact same thing as a driver would do with his truck.
Yeah. When I read through the code, I absolutely thought it sounded exactly the same kind of system that you have to do. There didn't seem to be a lot of differences in that sense, apart from the, it's a ship, not a truck.
Yeah.
But as far as the code states, that we must make sure that we test and that we check our safety critical equipment regularly. We have a policy in place to state when it should be done, and we have procedures in place to show how it should be done, and we have records in place to show we can evidence it has been done. Yeah. Again, those defects and that reporting in of those defects system, it would ask for the same audit trail. Okay. We need to be identifying what have we actually done about it? Because if we can't do that, then we can't evidence that we have fixed the non-conformance. So, guys, you have listened to me for a good solid hour and a half there. Thank you for that. I think you might deserve a break. Shall we do a lunch break, come back, and then go through to the end? And then we should. So if we did, do you want to do a solid half an hour? Do you want 45 minutes?
Say I'll have to shoot off around about 1:30, 1:45.
Do you want me just to keep going straight through them? Do you want a quick break? Just like 10
I
minutes?
could do with a quick break, yeah.
Yeah, quick.
Quick break and an early finish. Shall we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, nice one. So let's do 15 minutes now. I'll see you back here at 1:45, and then I will whiz through the remaining bit because there's not a huge amount left. We've got through loads this morning. So, sound like a plan? Awesome. All right, I'll see you in 15.
Okay, see you in a bit.
Did he complete SAT successfully? Yes, I believe it, right? I have the dates if you would like. Yes, you can put those in the record.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Are we back? Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Okay, guys. So, what I've done is just a little bit of a play around with the presentation. So, I'm going to finish going through the elements on the code up until 1:30, Richard, when you need to jump out. Then, what I've done is there was a big chunk of the session was that we were going to work through a live example of mapping the code to the QMS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that for the assignment session, and then we can finish the ERR and start mapping the ISM into it. I think that probably makes the most sense. So is that okay with you both?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the code also has a full section all about document control. I think that's fairly obvious from what we've been through so far today. You know, at the end of every section, I've said, yep, and we must be able to evidence this. To be able to evidence that, we need to have document control in place within our safety management system. So, you know, it should be that the procedures Richard uses for drills are the same procedures that Shona uses for drills. That the forms that you complete for having done the drills are the same forms, yeah, that have the same instructions within them, okay? And that we have a system in place for if we need to update said forms, and then we need new forms rolling out because legislation, regulation, code of practice, best practice has changed or evolved over the last year due to something. So we need to have that system in the background that controls that standardization, that controls that consistency of what we are delivering as an organization. Should also be the central point for anybody to get the updated, valid version of that document. And it should be the point where all proposed changes are reviewed, approved, and then reissued into the system and out to everyone. You know, and obsolete documents are then removed and archived, but never deleted because you never know. Oh, we have a cute dog. Hi, cute dog. I always like a cute dog on a call. That's never. I have 3 cute dogs, but apparently none of them want to sit with me right now. So they're all sat across the other side of the room, sleeping or staring at me, one or the other. So document control is super important in a safety management system, and as part of that ISM code, we need to make sure that we all have the right version. I have a rule in my organization, and that is that you are not allowed to download and save copies of things to your laptop. When you need it, you use the fresh copy from the correct document storage place. There's not that many, but you know, in the sense of don't download the training presentation, keep that one forever and just keep delivering it. No, because the development team might update the presentation. Don't download that one copy of that form and never check again, because regularly development might add things that are required to that form. So it's that system of how we manage that to ensure everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet. What we'll be creating throughout the course, because you guys in one way or another do have a lot of this already in place, it just doesn't kind of exist in a safety management manual as it stands at the moment. So part of what you guys will create will be this safety management manual. And in quality, we call it a QMS, so a quality manual. Yeah, same difference. So we're going to merge those two things together to ensure, but the code insists as part of applying that code, we should have that safety manual in place that allows a core structure to show our policies, procedures, responsibilities, reporting routes, operational controls, and emergency arrangements. Now, safety manuals may have some areas of them that are company wide. They may also, for you guys, have some areas of them that are site or vessel specific. So that will be you guys to determine what that structure looks like for you, whether it's that, you know, you have a core central area and then each site has its own safety manual based on the ships that it operates or the area that it operates in. That can be your decision to make where we start to really put this safety management system together. But as part of the code, we need to have that core, and that quality, that environmental policy I've sent you away to collect, that's the first document that goes in this manual, because that is the core overall intent of the organization. So the code also demands or ensures that we health check what we do. Yeah. And that's by internally auditing our safety management system. We need to not just have a piece of paper that's ticked that says that somebody does that. We need to ensure that it is done and it is done correctly. And it is done to meet the legislation, regulation, guidelines that sit around our operations. It's all well and good to have a load of records that sit in the background that people have signed and ticked to say they've done it. Do we go and see it? And the answer to that question should be absolutely yes. Okay. So all the areas of our ISM code, we should be auditing, we should be looking at maintenance, we should be looking at operations, we should be looking at resource, we should be looking at emergency preparedness, we should be looking at training and competency, and we should be auditing to make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing. Okay, because the code does not specify that you must do it in a specific way, just that you must. So your way is fine as long as you can evidence it, and as long as you can show that it's embedded within the business, and as long as it meets the regulatory requirement for the work that you do, and that you audit it to continually improve it, and that we don't stand still with those systems that we have. So the code expects that we should not be auditing our own homework. Yeah. So Richard, you shouldn't be auditing your department. You can go audit Shona's department if you like, and Shona can come and audit your department, but you shouldn't be auditing your own departments, because that is what we'll call marking our own homework. We mark our own homework. We do the most normal human thing to do, fix as we go. Yeah. We find the problem, we fix it. We find the problem, we fix it. That doesn't show us the trends, the themes, the patterns in what we're seeing. So we should mark each other's homework. Yeah, we should be independent of what we're auditing. And that is super important. And my other key qualification that I teach on top of quality practitioner is internal audit technician. And it's a core principle in any auditing that you do not mark your own homework. Objectivity matters. Yeah, you cannot be objective about something you are invested in. Yeah, and if you guys are passionate about what you do, then you're invested in it. So therefore, you cannot be impartial, you cannot be unbiased, you cannot be objective in that situation. The code expects that we use the results of an audit. We don't just do it, tick box exercise, stick it in a folder. We audited that, but we're using what we learn, and that we are communicating that to the right people in the business to ensure that proactive change happens. And code expects that managers should take timely corrective action on deficiencies. But it does not state what timely is. You set the timely in your organization. You decide what timely is based on the legislation and regulation that sits around what you do. But you need to make sure that you have those service level agreements or SLAs in place and that you can evidence that you operate to them. So really, in independence and follow-up, the code is being quite simple in what it's asking you for. It's asking you to be your own critical friend, to be honest about the reality of operations so that you can improve your operations. And it's really that simple. It is quite, you know, there's no difference between that and what ISO is asking you to do. ISO is exactly the same. Yeah? Be your own critical friend. Do not be afraid to say there's a non-conformance here. There's a better way of doing this. Because that's what a quality practitioner does. They improve things. We look at the way that we do things and we think of the way that we can improve that and we implement it. So the code and ISO are 100% in line with one another in these two particular areas. So we must have very specific documentation as part of the ISM code. Okay, you guys are the specialists in this area, but as far as it is so important that we have that safety management certificate in place, and that is a core verification requirement. Those that you have compliant management system that will, you know, is so it only comes when we've put the system in place. And then you can get tested, you can do your audit, and they'll come out, and then you will get your certificate of safety management that will then put you in the top echelons of operators in your area. That's the whole idea of it. But you're only going to get it if it's embedded and they can evidence that you do what you say you do and that you are an organization with a culture of safety management at the heart of it. So what it looks like, good implementation, a strong safety management system will have leadership visibility at the top. Yeah, it comes from the top down. It has to be embedded at all levels of the organization. So they want to see from the CEO to every layer of the business that everybody understands what the code is, what a safety management system is, and why it is important to the organization. They're going to want to see good evidenceable systems, policies, procedures in place and documenting and evidencing that you do what you say you do. They're going to want to see that, you know, you've not got an empty concerns register or accidents register or issues register, because in the reality of what you do, yeah, that's unreal. They're going to want to see it to be busy. They want to see people aren't afraid to come and tell you that there's a problem, that they need support, that there's a piece of equipment not working, that there's a risk that they've identified, and being able to evidence that your crew are confident to come to you as managers and let you know that there are issues. That is such a key element of the code, and that's where they will go and talk to your staff. They will want to see your staff doing what you have said that they do, and they will want to know that they know what the code is. They will want to know that they understand the risks that sit around their job and how they get help if they need support. They're going to want to see your emergency preparedness. So your, you know, how are you going to deal with incidents or your prompt response is how you manage that. They're going to want to see those lessons learned, that how have you taken what you learned from that? What have you done to ensure it doesn't happen again? So your root cause analysis. And they're going to want to see that you regularly review your processes, systems, and procedures to ensure that they are fit for purpose and things haven't changed. So the code will fail, yeah, if it's a paperwork exercise for you. It has to be everybody is on board for a cultural shift to work with a new embedded code that, and that's from the top down. So, I'm hoping with Neil, this is what, he specifically wants us to work towards with ISO. So I'm really hoping that we've got that buy-in, that, implementing this safety management system across the board is going to be really good for the business as a whole. So the weaknesses that tend to exist, and we get this in ISO, this is not just a ISM code thing, yeah, is that the system exists, right? And somebody somewhere made it. And it's very pretty, but no one uses it. No one reads the procedures. They just train them on what they did when they did that job. Yeah? No one's really clear on how to manage situations. Could be that they're not understanding what things they should and should not be reporting. Could be incomplete records. There's so many different things that could show weakness, but the real one that sits at the center is that it's a paperwork exercise, and that it's not we want a safety management system, it's that we want the stamp that comes with a safety management system. Put it, embed it, and make it work, and they are really great. My advice, and it will be throughout this entire process of embedding a system with you guys, is simplification. Simple as possible. Yeah. We don't want an overly complicated system that people can't manage. We want a good core structure that people can work from. So, we need to make sure that we are getting buy-in, people are on board, and that this is valuable for the whole organization as we go through the process. So linking the code, the QMS, the enterprise risk register, really what they all are is control environments. They're environments in which we control stuff. Yeah? They're environments in which we put control in place so that we can control stuff. The ISM code focuses on our ship operations. The quality management, ISO 9001, focuses on those consistent and controlled organizational processes and procedures. And the enterprise risk register looks at how we manage those strategical, legal, operational, financial, and reputational risks that affect our organization. The three things together are going to be the core of the system that we build. And that's going to be really important, because each one needs to be weaved together. And it's going to be my job to weave in the ISO 9001. And as the specialist, it's going to be your job to weave in the ISM code and those specialist operations that you guys do. And together, we will then create what is a really good enterprise risk register with a safety management system behind it. That's the plan anyway, guys. So we've had a look at QMS last time. We've had a look at ISM this time. We started, and I've got a rough draft of an enterprise risk register that people started last time. So what I want to do at the next session is bring everybody together, yeah, and we're going to take what we've done and we're going to take what we've learned today and we're going to finish that risk register and we're going to create it with the ISM code in mind for what we do. Okay, so the code expects us to look at emergency preparedness, maintenance, reporting, responsibilities, personnel, all of that kind of jazz. ISO, that wants us to look at our processes, our procedures, our training, our competency, our corrective action, our control. And the enterprise risk register wants us to look at those incidents, events, regulatory problems, operational disruptions, overall risks to the business. And they're going to come together as our core elements of our system. But we're going to start that in the next assignment thing, because I know, Richard, you've got a meeting you need to pop off to shortly. So I think the other guys, they're going to watch back the lecture bit. I'll put the session in the diary in a few weeks for us to do, kind of work through the risk register as an assignment. And then I think we'll take it from there. Is that all right, guys?
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah. Any questions you want to go through about the code?
No, I don't think so.
No? Is it making sense how it aligns with ISO? How similar the two things really are?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Excellent. All right. I will stop the recording here for today, guys.